Good morning all. New in Lidl this week is this Parkside LED light with power bank, PBSL 5000, that's 5000 milliamp hours. A1, that's their sort of revision code. So if they make a new version of this, it'll be A2 presumably. So 3.7 volt lithium ion 5 amp hour, and it's got two LED heads and you can bend them in all directions, and two pieces that make up the stand. You get that charge lead. Now I believe this has USB outputs as well on it, so it acts as a power bank. But let's get it open. And of course we're not just going to look at it and try its functions, we're going to take it apart. Right, in here, USB A, that end, to USB C. It's USB C. Operation and safety notes. Quite often in these Parkside or Lidl products, you get a separate safety manual and a separate operation manual. Not this time. So it's clicky. These click round in discrete steps. Now my experience of clicky things is that they're an absolute... Oh, that's not quite so clicky. That's more... Ooh. Yeah, they're an absolute nightmare to get apart. Oh, that's very sort of tight and a bit nasty, and doesn't actually come back without putting some leverage on it. Yeah, that's all a bit nasty actually. Now how do you turn these lights on? Oh, there's a button there. Let's press that. Where's the button? Oh crikey, that's bright. So you can have one or the other or neither or both. Yes, I suppose that's predictable. It doesn't look like there's any brightness control. Actually, let me press and hold, see what that does. Press and hold does nothing. So it looks like you can sort of angle them that way, or angle them that way, or angle them in both directions, or have them facing in opposite directions, all sorts of things. Now there's a latch on here. What does that... Oh, that comes off. Oh, I guess that acts as a hook or something, so you can hang it up. That's quite weird actually. I'll have a play with that. And I was thinking, these metallic elements here, they look a bit naff. It's a bit like chrome on cars, isn't it? But of course, they're magnets, so you can stick it to metal things. And then behind this flap, there is the USB-C input, the USB-A output, which I'm just going to try out, and three what look like LEDs there. They are LEDs, but you can't see them because they're outshone by this thing, but there they are. So that's saying battery full. Interestingly though, if you put the light on, it says battery is a little less full, and I presume that's because the LEDs actually use quite a bit of current and are pulling the battery voltage down. Right, let's start undoing screws. Now I'm a bit nervous about this because these clicky things have always been a nightmare in the past. But there are actually some screws on the ends of these rotating bearings, so I might start with those. So taking this end off, what will we see behind this thing which has sort of flats on it? There are so many screws in this. There are screws absolutely all along here, absolutely everywhere. I found two more screws now holding this white thing in. Whatever they do. Is there going to be a big spring behind that? Right, that appears to hold these two halves together, and you can lift them apart, and there's, I presume, a spring-loaded, yes, spring-loaded, ratchety clicky thing which makes the clicking noises, although this one, yeah, I can feel the teeth under there, this one doesn't click quite as positively as the one on the other side. But let's undo the other one, because that should all come apart. This actually looks reasonably well made and well thought out. Right, well nothing actually comes off yet, because although that's disconnected from that, this is the inner one of these. So that comes off, but then that's the inner one there, and these inner ones don't seem to come off. So I think I'm going to have to lift this to see what's underneath it, and that probably means lifting all of this panel. So let's do that now. Right, these three screws mean that this thing comes off, the sort of protective outer foot thing. I'm not getting very far with this. Okay, more screws. Right, well now that has come off, which is good because that comes completely away. And now we can see the battery, which is lithium polymer. Oh, can't see. Was that just stuck on? No, that's screwed down. So I can undo those screws and read what's written on this battery. And now that little gear pinion thing comes out of there. And that comes off there. And I think I can get rid of that piece. Yes. So undoing the 2 screws which hold this LED strip onto a couple of pillars. And that will show us the battery. Let's have a close-up of that. And it is, model name that, but 3.7 volts, 5,000 milliamp hours, 18.5 watt hours. This is a 2020-09 manufacturing date, and it's the Shenzhen Chaoliang Technology Development Company Limited. Now my guess is that this aluminium strip with all these LEDs on it is going to get quite hot. And how close is it to the battery? Well, let's see if I can show you that. Yeah, there's about 1 millimeter of air gap in there, but yeah, it's a little bit worrying how close that is to the lithium cell. Now the ratchet assembly for that wheel there, I think, must have been sitting in this little square receptacle here. And so when I took this off, it must have fallen out. Did you see it fall out? And I'm looking all over the place and I can't find it. It must be a little, well, presumably white plastic thing, a bit like that, with a spring in it. I think the springs in this are all a bit tough, actually. It's all a bit tight. But I can't find it, so I don't know where that went. Well, I suppose I can see what it looks like if I take these 2 screws out, releasing the ratchet that's on there, and see what's pressing down on it. What springs and things are in there. Well, that's what I'm looking for. A white plastic pip and a spring behind it. Now that must have shot out and I can't find it anywhere, so this might not be as clicky as it was. But it reveals this, which is quite nice because it's got sockets for the battery and the 2 lights, so they can come out. We could probably take this PCB out. Well, let's do that. Well, let's disconnect these connectors. So there's that one for the light on this side. The wires are very short on that, but it's come out just about. The light on this side is the next one along, and the battery is that one. Just be careful that doesn't short. Right, I can get the LED strips. The battery's probably stuck in, but I can get the LED strips off, and then that reveals the PCB. And that leaves just the battery pack stuck on there, which is on its 2-pin connector. Make sure that doesn't touch something metal. And the PCB, which is attached by 4 screws. So let's take that off and have a closer look. I'm just thinking back, actually. One of these things appeared to click and the other one kind of didn't. So I'm just wondering, actually, whether there was only ever one of these. Yeah, maybe they only fitted one. I don't know. Anyway, here's the circuit board. Let's have a closer look. Well, on this side, we've just got a moment action push switch. The USB-C connector, which is stuck up on its own little daughter board, which is actually pushed through holes in the bottom board and soldered on both sides. That's quite peculiar. A USB-A, which is also a vertically mounted one. There's a big cap there. There's a 0 ohm resistor there. And we've got these 3 2-pin JSTs. On the other side, appear to have an inductor there. So I'm guessing that one of these is a switch mode. Oh, it'd have to be, wouldn't it? Because we've got 3.7 volts there. And we need to get it up to 5 volts for the USB output. So yeah, that must be the boost converter that steps it up. Microcontroller here, quite probably for the push button functions to cycle through the 4 combinations of lights being on and off. And a device there, not sure what that is. We'll have a closer look. Right, the boost converter is a Sky Power SP4533. Yeah, you can just see Sky Power there. This is an LP4056. I've heard of a TP4056, and that's almost certainly the charge controller from USB in, which is on the USB-C here, to the lithium cell to make sure it charges properly. The microcontroller here has absolutely no markings on it. It's completely blank. It runs off to these three resistors marked R102, and they're all R102. So these are values. These are not resistor numbers, and I approve of that. And I've looked at them, and they are 102 resistors, and therefore the three LEDs that make up the remaining power indicator for the power bank function. Yeah, you've got an R103 here and an R513. They've used capacitor numbers and resistor numbers that are actually the values of the components. I like that. And the two outputs here for the main cob LEDs, these yellow LEDs on the metal strips, this one runs back to here, and we've got two resistors fitted, positions for 3, 2 MOSFETs fitted, positions for 3. The other one is here, again 2 MOSFETs fitted, 2 resistors, and these wires run through and come up to here, I think. Yeah, the wires run through and then they go under here. I can't see what it's doing, but it would go to R minus. I guess L and R are left and right. Battery comes in on here. So that's it, a microcontroller to do the power bank remaining power indicator, remaining energy indicator. Also presumably to do the switching of the two main LEDs. We've got a charge control chip and a boost converter to generate 5 volts on the USB-A output, and that's it. It's pretty much that simple. Well, I just think I'll plug the battery back into the board for no particular reason. And there go the three. Oh, they're green. Oh, they're red and green. Why are they red and green? Let's press that button. So they're red to indicate the remaining power. Oh, maybe when you charge it, they go green. But yeah, definitely when I did the boot up sequence, it's red and then it's green. I wonder if they're blue as well. No, probably just red and green. Okay, let's put it all back together. Which is going to take some time, and I'm sure you don't want to watch the whole thing in tedious full time domain. I can't use this shot, it's absolutely useless. That's one LED strip back in, and now I can switch that on. That's modulating, isn't it? I think they're varying the brightness slightly. I think actually when you turn both LEDs on, they pulse-width modulate them down a bit to use a little less current, because that has a different strobing effect to that. Yes, I think that's what they're doing. Right, I'll just fit the other one. Now, one other observation, there is a little green printed circuit board actually on the end of the lithium cell here, with a few markings on it, B minus there. So my guess is that the TP4056, which is now under this LED, controls the charging of this thing, but it on this board has over discharge protection so that it can't run itself down to less than about 3 volts or maybe 2.5, whatever they're doing on this, and it almost certainly has a DW01 on there and some of those 8205 MOSFETs. It looks to me like the original idea was to have a top sprung clicky ratchet thing, and there's also a hole in there, so a bottom one, in other words one either side, but that would have been virtually impossible to reassemble. So they've obviously gone for one, and then they put one on one side and they didn't bother to put one on the other. I think I'm going to leave them out completely for the moment, because this spring is absolutely fierce. I think it's far too aggressive. So I'm not going to put any clicky things on these rotating wheels and just see how that goes. Yeah, the problem I see with that though is that this is just free to completely rotate without restriction. So I think I do need a clicky thing, but perhaps I'll put it on the opposite of the one that it was on to start with and just see if that's any better. Probably won't be. Right, well now I've opened these up and the center clicky thing, that bit there with the spring behind it, has dropped off the end of its run. So I'm going to have to push that in. Gosh, it's ever so stiff. And I'll just run it to the very last click, which I think is there. And that should enable me to get this piece on and the screws back in. Yes, I think that'll do it. And now a springy thing in there, because I can't rotate it. Like that, before I put the two halves of this back together. And that gives that its clickiness when I put these bearings back on. That one isn't very convincing. It's a bit soft. Not quite sure why that is. Let's try the one on the other side. The other side is slightly easier because that's hinged, which is this thing where you can press that button and hinge this up. Press that button. Oh, that comes out, doesn't it? Yes, that's right. So yeah, let's get the clicky thing in there. So it just means dropping this little sprung ratchety piece in there, dropping that down over the top of it, putting the bearing in there. Let's get the two screws out. Ah, are those smaller screws? I think I put long screws on the other side. I'll deal with that. Okay, so just these rubber bumpers to go back on both sides. If I can get that one in, yes I can. And these end caps, and that should be it. So that's it back together, and now I can appreciate these ratchet strengths. The two big arms have barely any ratchet click at all, but they're just a bit stiff. I mean, I could lubricate them, I suppose, perhaps with some silicone lubricant. This one has the hardest ratchet. Let's open this one up. That's that very solid spring that's only on one side. Appears to be that side. And then these two open with respect to each other with that sort of medium strength ratchet. So it's an odd device. It's bright, probably a bit too bright in some circumstances. And am I ever going to use this power bank functionality? I don't know, but then hopefully this video will pay for this item. It did for that GU10 lamp I took apart the other day. Actually, I'm just going to check how much that's made so far. Yes, that GU10 lamp, I think it cost me £6.59. I'm almost embarrassed to say, but $62. So this kind of works, so we'll see how this one goes. But that's it back together. Both LEDs, top one, bottom one, no LEDs, and of course the power bank functionality with little LEDs. Let's turn the lights off. Oh, that doesn't actually work, does it? How can I make those LEDs come on? Yes, that's right. Plug in my little USB load, take it out again, and then you can see the battery level there. So that's it. That's the Lidl Parkside LED light with power bank. Great if you like all your ratchets to be completely different weights. Yeah, all different and rather strange. Cheerio.